Welcome to the latest episode of Player Driven. Before you get listening, let's hear what you're about to listen to. Today, we're being joined by Emily Scahill. She is the head of client success at SkillSearch. They do some really cool things. We talk about things about her transition from HR to recruitment in gaming and what that was like. We talk about the importance of strategic hiring when it comes to gaming. How do you know when to hire, how to scale, how to make sure you don't make any of those mistakes? And most importantly, we talk about networking and career development in gaming. How do you build out your network? How do you continue to nurture that network and make sure that it helps work for you? It's a really fun episode. Emily is a blast, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to Player Driven. Greg here. Today, we have the pleasure of being joined by Emily Skahill. She is the head of client success for games at SkillSearch. So, we're going to learn a lot about what studios are looking for, what attracts top tier talent. And she has a really cool story coming from HR and how that all rounds out. And it tells a really fun story that I'm excited to learn more about. First, Emily, thank you so much for joining me today. How's your day? How are you?
Yeah, I'm really well, thank you. It's great to be here. How are you doing?
I am doing well. I am home with a sick child, but life goes on.
Oh no. Oh, I
It's
hope you
all
get better soon.
Me too. He needs to go back to school. Uh, I am excited about today's conversation. Before we just jump into it, did I miss anything? Do you want to say anything about yourself?
um, I, who knows? I can talk a little bit more about myself if that would be helpful, but I feel like you summarized it well.
Let the people know a little more about Emily Scahill.
I've been with SkillSearch, the games talent acquisition. I say games. We also work in interactive tech. The interactive tech team will tell me off if I don't mention that. We've been working in that space for 30 years, and by interactive tech, I mean things like VR. You know, it's not just used in a gaming context; it's also used in a commercial context, AI, robotics, that sort of thing. Um, yeah, so I've been working with them for a couple of years now. Started out as a recruitment consultant, having transitioned from a HR management role, which is a bit of an odd journey. You know, normally you go from recruitment to HR, but I went the reverse way because I've been a HR manager for many years, and but always since I was a kid really passionate about video games, and I found out that there was a video games talent agency in my home city, and I couldn't believe I had no idea the whole time. So I took the leap, took the opportunity to join you know, my favorite industry, and I've been so much more happy ever since. As much as I enjoyed HR and driving forward initiatives, hopefully creating a great working environment for staff, managers, and volunteers. And you know, making working on EDI and making an inclusive and welcoming environment. I just love working in this creative space, talking to video game studios and publishers and service providers, and learning about how it's all made. So yeah, hopefully bringing something to the industry with my background and my experience.
Yeah, you have so much you said there. And I think we just built the podcast off of basically what you just spoke about there because I find it awesome and fascinating. And I have lots of questions at the same time. So I'm just going to throw a bunch of things out here and let's see what sticks, what doesn't. Our first conversation, you told me there were a whole transition from HR to recruiting or hiring, right? And I found that fascinating because in my mind, and I know I'm just sectioning off a piece of HR, right? I'm used to HR being those ones that deliver the not so great news, right? Especially in this gaming industry recently, it's been hammered with layoffs everywhere, right? And it's been tough. And now you're gone to the hiring side where you're trying to help these individuals find jobs, find new locations, or helping the studios fill the roles that they have available to them. Is there experience that you took from the HR world that you were able to apply to the hiring side of things to say, hey, I know how to help make this journey easier, or any skills or best practices you can recommend?
Yeah, I think it's about taking a holistic approach. You know, often um, those bad conversations that you have to have, or difficult conversations you have to have as a HR professional, can come from not getting the foundations right early on. And that's not to say it's all HR's fault or all managers' fault. Um, Things pop up, life happens. Sometimes candidates are, or staff are dealing with their own issues. Something changes for them, or it's just not the right job fit. But I guess that's my point. Is sometimes those performance issues where you have to have those difficult conversations can come from not properly vetting your, or not casting a wide enough net, not recruiting in the right way, looking in the right places to find the right skills, and then not properly vetting those people in the selection process to make sure they're a right fit for not only the role, the team, the wider studio culture, the challenges that may pop up and they may face. A lot of us, when we think about a job, will think about, oh yeah, I could do that. I'm motivated by that. But are you still motivated when you think about all the challenges that will arise during that job? Um, can you take the worst day in that job and keep going? What if it turns into a few weeks or a few months? Are you motivated to? Can you deal with that? Are you motivated to get through that? Um, so yeah, it's that kind of thing, and then also, planning properly, risk assessing, not, as unfortunately we've seen in so many cases, the overhiring that happened. And I don't want to come across as like a know-it-all, or and hindsight is what's it, 2020, is that the phrase?
In hindsight, yep.
But it does boggle my mind when I think about the overhiring that happened during the pandemic, and we're now reaping what was sown, hopefully coming out the other side of it now. But you had this mad rush for talent, this gold rush, because everyone was at home and lockdown and playing video games during COVID, and then they were released, and it was so short-sighted. And I think humanity in general is so, I'm getting very philosophical now, but it's so short-sighted and so bad at assessing risk. um like, we weren't prepared for COVID, when flu's a thing. Like, we could have learned from the flu, and planned for an epidemic. Epidemics happen. We were so ill prepared for that, and then we had COVID, and we overhired, and we were so ill prepared to deal with the consequences of things going back to normality, which is presumably what we were all aiming for. And so, yeah, long tangent. It's taking the holistic approach to think about the future, assess risks appropriately, therefore hire appropriately, and that includes not just overhiring, but planning for, what if your key staff member working on this project leaves? Where will that leave you? What kind of other pressure will that put on the rest of the team? Will you be able to deliver on deadlines? All those sorts of things. So I think, it's that thinking strategically, thinking about, yeah, the employment life cycle as a whole, and how you can mitigate against various different factors, uh, is I think what I bring from HR to recruitment in general.
There's two things I wrote down while you're talking. I loved everything you were talking about. The first one that stood out to me was people really want to fill these roles, but people don't really understand the challenges that might arise, and they may not be able to stand up to those challenges or live up to those challenges. And I think gaming is a really good call out for something like that. And I can speak from my own experience. For a long time, I wanted to open up my own little restaurant, and I thought it sounded like such a great idea. I love cooking, I love doing all that stuff. But people don't think about the negative side to this, right? When a hobby becomes a job, you have to deal with these pressures, whether they be the pressures you prepared yourself for or you didn't prepare yourself for. And I think, people think about making games and they're like, oh, it's going to be great. I'm just going to come here, I'll throw some code together and I'll have a game and everyone wants to come play this game. But they don't think about the other aspects that come along with
Yeah.
that side of the things. And it gets scary when all of a sudden you're doing your hobby and you love it and you come across this challenge that you're not really sure how you face it. And it becomes a fight or a flight type of circumstance of, can
Mm.
I live up to this? Can I do this? And I think people are often ill prepared. They think they know everything, but it's something you learn with age, right? This
Yeah.
experience makes a big difference, and whether you hate it or love it, and that idea, like when you've been in the driver's seat and you know how these things are going to go, it does kind of prepare you for what's going to happen and what's going to come next.
100%. And I think, yes, those experiences come with age, but um, this is where people can take advantage of how connected we are now as well. Um, not everybody wants. Well, I think there's a kind of a joke that goes, if you're on LinkedIn, you've failed, because nobody wants to be on LinkedIn.
Oh
So
man, you're
if you
killing
have,
my audience here. That's
yeah,
where I
I'm
find
so
everyone.
sorry. I swear spend sort of 7 hours of my working day. Um, so I've maybe by that metric failed at something. What was I saying? I've no idea. I think, yeah, in terms of taking advantage of how connected we are now, and you can take advantage of platforms like LinkedIn, and reach out to people for a conversation or a coffee if you're interested in trying something, in getting into a particular field. Try to find people that are experienced, who've done that before, have an honest conversation with them about what are the toughest parts of this job. The same thing applies to um, working at a studio or working at a particular company. Easier said than done, because really you want a trusted friend that's maybe working there that will be honest with you and not just be like, why are you asking me all these weird questions about my company? What are you up to? But if you were, for example, looking at starting your own business or starting your own studio, try and reach out to someone that's done that before. There's a lot that you can learn from and prepare for, to know whether you can deal with the challenges, or even if you can't deal with them now, prepare yourself to be able to deal with them. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the best part of the audience you can build, and I think I encourage everyone to network online. Right, most people don't bite when you message them online, and more people are happy to share their experiences. That's what I've learned about doing this podcast. Is I can reach out to most people in most industries, and people are excited to be able to talk and tell what they do. Right, if you have questions about a studio, if you have questions about a role, or you have a mentor that you just want to reach out to because you admire
Mm.
their work, I think people are often flattered when they reach out and hear from people who look at their work, watch this work, or want to understand what they do. And I think people are, especially in this culture where we are now, in this kind of content creation type of culture, people like to be able to share these types of things with one another and support best practices.
Yeah, it's so true. I think, people by their nature they want to help other people, unless they're having a particularly bad day or you catch them at a bad time. I think it's natural to want to help other people. So I would say, don't be afraid, don't be shy to reach out. It's nice for someone to be able to share their experience and think about that.
The other thing you mentioned a little earlier, which I loved, is that humankind as a whole, we're very reactive as a group rather than proactive, right? And we
Mm.
saw that the prime example of it was during COVID, where all of a sudden we all were bored sitting on our couches because we couldn't leave our houses, and gaming just skyrocketed, right? And the first thing these companies thought of was, let's hire a ton of people because people will be sitting on their couches for the inevitable future. Well, then
Mm.
COVID's gone and people start leaving their house again and they have less time for gaming. And all of a sudden we have these massive layoffs, right? That's one example of many, right? And another one that's less related to COVID is the amount of live ops games that come out these days. How many online player versus player shooters can we have?
Mm.
People only have so many hours a day to play a game, and they keep pumping these out, right? And I think this year, right, we've seen games like Concord where it just didn't click with the audience, and all of a sudden companies lose millions of dollars, right? And I think people are going to start again proactively taking a look at the market and start saying, all right, how do we prepare for the future, right? We keep
Mm.
falling into these same mistakes over and over again of chasing the hottest trend. And it does work for that small 1% of the companies that can publish a game quickly, put it out there, right? But for 99% of the companies, they can't compete. They can't keep up with these AAA publishers. And that's why, I mean, we're in this world of indies that are coming out now, right? Balatro is a great example of that, where
Yeah.
who saw that coming, right? And I think, I think there's more educated people taking a look at the market and say, hey, which genres have not been tapped into for a number of years that perhaps we can create new content for or new games for, right? And I think uh, it's funny. I just loved how you said we're reactive, right? And I agree with that. It's just there's these little, and I think it's never going to change. I think humankind is just, we're built to be reactive, not proactive. But there's those small subset of people that are those difference makers that are thinking ahead of us, and it's fascinating to kind of see that. And I just loved how you put that.
Yeah, I think you put it better than me, to be honest, in terms of that reactive nature. It's yeah, I mean, and there are some things that you just can't see coming, you know. It's not just the overhiring and COVID that's caused these redundancies. It's things like the you know, the war in Ukraine and you know, therefore funding drying up from Russia and stuff like that's had a big impact. And I think a few, you know, even a few months out, I suppose there were warning signs, but people didn't really think it was going to happen. And so, yeah, there is a limit to how much you can assess risk, but it's I think people just don't. It's important to keep educated, right? Keep educating yourself, keep up to date with the news, try and mitigate. Not all risks will happen, but try and mitigate for risk as much as possible. And just that whole thing about, you know, the amount of hiring that went on in COVID is one that for me really sticks out, because I'm just like, you surely we were all planning to leave the house again someday.
Speak for yourself. I was planning
Yeah,
constantly.
yeah.
You mentioned that earlier, right? Going from your HR to client success, customer success, right? In the gaming was kind of you having an opportunity in the field that you loved, the gaming world. Can you kind of tell us a little more of kind of that transition on like how did this opportunity come to be and what does it mean to you?
Um, it was really bizarre actually. So I worked in higher education as a HR manager, and so you know that means that their students and graduates was the audience that my charity or company was working with. And SkillSearch posted a graduate job opportunity and tagged my organization in it to get access to that audience. And I saw it and realized that it was recruitment in video games. And I reached out and was like, can you apply for this if you graduated a very, 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 very long time ago? And they said, yes, absolutely you can, which is great to hear. But it's probably too junior for you. Um, and at the time, unfortunately, my husband was going through a redundancy, and I said, yes, actually, you know, I can't take a pay cut to that extent right now. I'm the sole breadwinner. Um, but we kept talking. They kept in touch, and eventually we found a position that you know worked for both of us. So I think you know it's always important to give yourself every opportunity possible. If you see something and you're not sure, reach out and ask a question, reach out and start a conversation, keep in touch, because you never know where it might lead. Don't shoot yourself in the foot or exclude yourself from an opportunity by going, oh, that doesn't work for me, or that's not the right role, or I'll never get that. Like you have to give yourself every opportunity possible.
Yeah, you know, this kind of goes back to the networking thing that we were just talking about earlier, but in the other way of like, you don't get what you don't ask for, right?
No.
And the worst that can happen is that you're rejected and say, "Sorry, no, we're only hiring new graduates," right?
Mhm.
But you figured, what do I have to lose? I'm going to ask. I'm going to start this conversation, and it didn't take off right away. But you realize, hey, we can keep this conversation alive. We can keep it going, and it did kind of build into that. And I think that it's something that we talked about in sales. One of my mentors, Ed, he always said, if you're talking to your prospect every day, often, it means that they're not talking to your competitors. So if you're the one talking to the people who are hiring in the job and creating the job and building the stuff out, they're going to start to know who Emily is. And they're going to start saying, hey, we have a role that I think is shaped for. So always staying in touch, always just asking questions, be inquisitive. I don't know if that's the right word I
Yeah.
want to use there, right? Like, uh, and these companies will not build a role for you, but they're going to identify this is a good position for you, even if you don't think it makes sense. Like, I know you now, right? And I recommend you do here. And I love how it brought you into the industry that you love it. And one of the questions I always love to ask is, before all this, before you had that degree, what did Emily dream of being when she was growing up?
Oh, do you know what? I never really knew. When I was really little, I wanted to be a vet just because I love animals, still do. Then I realized maybe cutting them open isn't what I want to do.
Yeah, there's a line to be drawn there, right?
Yeah, like petting them versus cutting them open, two very different
Yeah.
interactions. Yeah, I kind of just bumbled through. I guess is I just worked my socks off at school, and through my degree. Um, I remember just as I was leaving A level, which I guess is college for different audiences, maybe. But before uni, before college in the US, I guess, the final years of school, basically.
We call that
I
high school.
High school, yeah. Just as I was leaving, I spoke to the sort of the head of high school back then, is because we were meant to be choosing what we wanted to do, our careers, etc. And I just didn't have a clue. I liked science, but in my 17-year-old, 18-year-old brain, I was like, well, I don't want to be a doctor or a scientist, so what good is that to me?
You could have been rolling in the money, living
I
it
know,
up.
I know. Why didn't I stick to a STEM subject? Um, yeah, his advice was just, well, if you're not sure what you want to do, pick something you're good at. That's a more of a generalist mainstream subject. So I didn't go for what was back then, I guess, considered by some more of like a wacky subject like psychology. Again, looking back now, why didn't I choose that? And I just stuck to sort of one of the core subjects, so like English, maths, those kinds of things. So I went down an English literature route, studied that at university, and yeah, I ended up then standing to be an elected officer for the student union as I left uni, because basically it was the charity there. That's where I became a HR manager eventually. That got me through university. It was a very tough time, as it is for many people going to university. Um, so yeah, I stood to be an elected officer because I wanted to give something back to the organisation that had got me through those 3 years. Um, and then yeah, it became HR, and then you've already heard the bit about you know joining SkillSearch, and the kind of advice I've gathered over the years, as it applies to me, but it might not apply to everyone, is if you're not sure what you want to do, follow your interests. I think when I was younger, I put all this pressure on myself to work out what my passion is. What's my passion? What do I want to do? And I could never fully commit to something. Um, some people know, and that's amazing. Some people know at a very early age they want to be a doctor, and they can get everything towards that. They do the right courses, they do the right volunteering. By the time they get to the university application point, they're the golden candidate, and they're fully prepped and ready to go. That wasn't me. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And yeah, I think over the years I've learned, if you follow your interests, because lots of people have many and varied interests, it will lead you somewhere eventually. I have interests outside of video games, not many. It's my main passion. But you know, I've ended up in this industry because it's an interest of mine, and I followed every opportunity that's, I guess, presented itself after a certain point. I wish when I was a lot younger, I'd realized that you can or should learn coding or art or something else if you want to work in video games. But the good news for us is there are lots of other roles in video games too, like recruitment, like HR, like sales. So there are lots of ways of finding your way there eventually.
That's one of the whole reasons I wanted to start this podcast is because I never, after failing C++, I never thought I'd have a way to get into the gaming industry. And then through sales and sales engineering, I was able to find it. So I love the idea of follow your interests because it really, when you love what you do and you do what you love, it comes natural to you. And like you mentioned earlier, there still are going to be hurdles. There still are going to be times when you have things pushing against you, forces kind of that are tough, and you have to find a way to overcome it, right? And that's just part of having a job.
Mm,
But once you follow your interests, you just kind of love what you do, and you just kind of run with it. And I think that's fantastic.
mm.
Usually about halfway through there, I like to go kind of to a fireball round where I can throw some quick hitting questions at you. Good to go.
I'm ready. I'll try and
All
be
right.
succinct.
I'm gonna. Emily just recently posted a cool picture of her playing Dragon Age with her Govee lights on her TV, everything glowing. But outside of Dragon Age, what game are you playing now?
Outside of Dragon Age, what
It
game
can be Dragon Age too.
Cult of the Lamb. I discovered that recently and I adore it. And it's nice to have something co-op to play so that me and my husband actually spend some time together rather than just play side by side completely different things. My
Nice. What is your dream vacation?
dream vacation. Probably I've had the privilege of going to Japan once. I think that I'd love to go back. It was 2016 when I went. So much has changed since, and it's such a diverse and varied country. I'd love to return and see more of it.
Great. If you had one last meal, what would that meal be?
Oh, sushi.
Sushi. Can you be
Or
more
dumplings,
more
gyoza.
specific?
Japanese cuisine in general,
All
but
right. Matches with your dream trip.
yeah.
Love it. Last book or movie you read or watched?
Okay, the last movie we watched was Gladiator, the 2001, because
Oh, the
we'd
real one.
never,
Okay.
yeah, we'd never seen it, and I guess it was on our minds because number two's coming out. So finally saw that. And the last book I read, God, what am I reading? At the moment, I'm reading Butter, which is a Japanese book translated to English. I'm not smart enough to know Japanese, about a serial killer who also loves cooking.
Beautiful. Fresh sushi.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. I think that's all I got. Yeah, we'll end it there. I appreciate those answers here. I want to talk a little bit about skill search. Can you kind of just break it down? What is skill search and what's it providing to its customers?
Sure. Okay. This is the one I should be able to answer really well. We'll see how it goes.
Please, come on, pressure's on.
So we are a video games talent partner, and I suppose, at its core, we provide candidates for jobs. Studios contract us when they're struggling to fill a job, or have too many jobs to fill and they need an extra helping hand, or maybe they need to fill a job covertly. There's a replacement they need to make, or an upcoming job that they can't announce publicly yet and they can't attach their name to, and they need someone else to be able to get out there in the marketplace and find someone. Um, that's what we do, sort of, I suppose, in its most simplistic form. But we view ourselves and hope that our clients view ourselves through our actions, as their strategic talent partner. So it's not just popping our heads up when we've got a role to fill and we're likely to earn some money, but being there all the time. So if a client of ours or a studio is struggling to do salary benchmarking, or know why they're losing candidates at offer stage at the end of a process, or losing candidates throughout a process, whatever it might be, employer branding, improving equality and diversity, um, being there to work with them and provide advice on developing that. There are a few different ways of working, which I won't go into because I'll probably end up boring your audience stiff. But we can work as we can loan out a member of our team to a studio, as well as just work roles ad hoc. So we can kind of become part of their team and do lots of hiring for them as and when is needed, as well as that ad hoc work. So that's kind of on the studio side. And then on the candidate side, it's about building those relationships with candidates, being there to advise them on their CV, their portfolio, interview skills, how to go about the job hunt, things like networking and stuff like that. And really understanding what it is that they're looking for next. So a lot of candidates so we've been running a games salary and satisfaction survey for 11 years now. The results of our upcoming one are still being collected, but I had a little sneak peek at the data before this podcast to see if there
Woo!
was anything
Hot takes here.
interesting that I could share. Yeah, breaking news. And for 2025, around 30% of candidates have said they won't actively be looking for work. About 30%, I'm going to show if I've got my memory wrong or my maths wrong here, around
We
30
can't fact check you yet. Don't worry.
around 30% said that they might be looking for work, and I think it was 40% that said that they would 100%, yes, they would be looking for work. So, a lot of the time it's about asking the right questions, because those candidates that have either said they're a maybe or no, they're not looking for work, they are those are the ones that you might not capture if you post a job advert, or if you reach out to them and it's not with the right opportunity, they're going to ignore you. So it's about talking to candidates and understanding exactly what their next dream role looks like or their next move looks like. So that you know when a job comes in exactly who is going to bite your hand off for that role, even if they've said, no, I'm not looking for work right now. What would get them looking for work? What would be the right fit for their next right move?
So think that's fascinating, and I think it's great. And I have many spin-off questions. Right, years and years and years ago, I created my resume, my CV, because I needed a job out of school, and I got my first job. And since then, I've updated the qualifications, I guess, or my job history on the LinkedIn. I haven't really messed with the template. I haven't messed with the look and feel. This was a decade ago.
Mm.
Um, have things changed in the CV resume world? Obviously, people still have that type of stuff, but are there new trends that are seeing? Are people doing video resumes? Are they putting things on there? Like, is there something that you see working in the market today when people are looking to be hired that helps them stand out than just the normal CV?
That's really interesting. I haven't really seen a lot of video, or any, maybe my colleagues have seen video CVs. On the one hand, I would say anything you can do right now to get your CV to stand out amongst the pile of other CVs is no bad thing. Unfortunately, candidates are up against hundreds, sometimes thousands of other candidates, and doing something to make your CV stand out um, and make it more memorable can be really beneficial. Obviously, now I suppose what's probably changed over the years is a lot of studios are using ATS. It's called applicant tracking systems that will kind of pass a CV. There's so many systems that still say upload your CV and then fill in your entire employment history separately, and you think, why did I have to upload my CV? What was the point of that? But
It's like a nightmare. We've all been there.
do the work and then do it again. It wasn't fun enough the first time.
Now they
So
have like what's connect with LinkedIn. Like you click it and nothing gets filled out. You're like, what am I connecting?
yay. So yeah, there are applicant tracking systems to consider now. And sometimes I guess I get asked, oh, is my resume optimized for that? I think, you know, PDFs can sometimes throw them off, but really it's more important to have a clear layout. Job title, dates, and then bullet points for under each, for 3 or 4 for each relevant role, about your responsibilities and your achievements in that role. um, I think, advice, or just my understanding of what a good CV looks like, has developed over the years, but I don't think there've been major changes on that front. Maybe we've moved. Yeah, no, I don't think there have been too many major changes.
It's time for it to evolve a little bit, right? I mean, I know I'm not in that world, right? But I feel like it's just so antiquated, and especially when I go to a site that's like, upload your cover letter. I'm just like, oh, I don't want to have to create a cover letter now. Am I overthinking a cover letter, or is it? I
Mm,
don't know. I feel like
yeah.
it's so old school.
So my advice for a cover letter is, don't be intimidated by the word letter. It doesn't need to be 3 or 4 pages. In fact, 1 or 2 paragraphs is usually fine. It's more, that's where, so your CV is kind of your record of your experience and your achievements. Your cover letter is where you tailor that to the job that you're applying for. So it's kind of matchmaking, taking um, X from your CV and Y from the job advert and marrying it up and being like, highlighting my experience here. This is how, I think I'm a great match for this role, or this is why I'm passionate about this role, or that kind of thing. Um, so I think, again, in a world where you're having to compete with hundreds of thousands of applicants, taking that extra little bit of time to tailor your CV to the role, tailor your cover letter to the role, is what's going to make you stand out and make a difference. I suppose, going back to your previous question about what's changed, probably the biggest change is LinkedIn. That wasn't really a massive thing years ago, and now it is. And that's where recruiters will go to look for candidates more often than not. Sometimes they'll look at places like ArtStation and stuff like that, but LinkedIn, you need to make sure that that is professional, up to date, um, and yeah, easy to navigate and understand. I think, uh, yeah, those are the kind of the main things, and your overall online presence is also something to consider. I think it can be useful when you're on the job hunt to do a little bit of an audit of your social media. Some companies will go and check that because they need to protect their brand, they need to protect their reputation. And really, if they see something that's a red flag on your social media, most of the time that shouldn't exclude you. They should be having a conversation um, about that with you to gain a better understanding of what that's about. But yeah, thinking about, does my Instagram or my Facebook or TikTok, if someone looks it up, uh, say something that's going to put an employer off, that's important to do a little audit of that as well.
Well said. Appreciate that. As someone, or maybe people often get reached out by recruiters on LinkedIn, right? And often it's ignored. What would be the mistake? And you've already kind of answered this, but I'm going to double down here, right? Why shouldn't I ignore recruiters on LinkedIn?
That's a good question. I mean, you're well within your rights to ignore a recruiter. We're reaching out the blue. You might not want what we're selling. That's fine. Maybe there's something to be said for responding anyway, just to say, not right now because of XYZ, but thanks for reaching out, because you never know when that connection might be useful again in future. And also, you never know when, if you're also providing a little bit of a reason as to why it's not suitable, maybe they've got more information that perhaps wasn't clear, or would potentially make you reconsider, or had just come across wrong, that might actually mean that the job is suitable for you.
So, Emily, head of client success for games at SkillSearch. You came from an HR background. For your current position, what skill set would you say you utilize the most on a day to day basis? And if you could go back to university, would there be a different class or a different thing you want to learn a little more to help elevate where you are today?
Oh gosh, that's a
I know,
really
I
good
didn't even warn you for
question.
this one.
I'm
Crap,
like,
I got to think of something now.
what skill set do I use the most? Um, I think I think for me, it's it's more values that I stick to. Um, I suppose I what's natural for me is to be very diligent and to follow up, which I think works well in sales. Um, you have to give yourself every opportunity. Um, and yeah, it's kind of that consistency and building relationships over time. That's where you'll see success. I think it's, in the current market in particular, it's a lot of our success doesn't necessarily come from an immediate win. Like you reach out and someone's like, yes, I'm going to give you a job. Um, or yes, we're looking for candidates right now. That does happen, but it's very now evenly balanced with building long-term relationships where over time you're building trust and people want to work with you and you get to a point where they sign an agreement with you even if they've not got roles right now because they can see the value that you bring and know they want to work with you in future. So I think it's that building trust, following up, being diligent, those kinds of things. But I suppose when I say values, it's more about trust and honesty and being yourself. I don't think there's any point trying to be anything else, and people will see through that, and you won't deliver your best because you're not in your comfort zone and you're not, yeah, bringing your best self to work every day. If that makes sense. Um, but if I had chosen something different at school, that's an interesting one because I suppose you can be good at anything if you spend enough time on it. Um, I love art in video games. Maybe I would have loved to go down that route. Um, I don't think coding is my passion, but I do enjoy building things. So yeah, maybe something in those realms. I suppose I did a psychology A level, so maybe if I'd stuck to that and carried that through university, that would have been useful on the HR and recruitment front as well.
To the first part of what you were saying, it kind of goes back to what I think the theme of this episode is almost networking is, hey, build that network, nurture your network, make sure they know who you are as a human,
Mm,
right? When you become friends with someone, whether you're selling to them, whether you just want to become a contact, right? They learn to trust you. They know that they can reach out to you, right? You become a friend, not a sales rep, not a person trying to push a product. You become a trusted advisor that they can reach out to when an issue arises. So
yeah,
I love how you put that.
100%.
The last question I have for you today, Emily, then I can have you go on with the rest of your day. And this doesn't necessarily have to be you, but more the role of head of customer or client success. Where do you go from there? Have you thought about what that next step would look like? Is it still in client success? Where does one go from there?
That's a really good question. Um it's hard to say because I really love what I do. I'm enjoying what I do right now. But just talking more generally, I suppose is the question that you're asking, where you go from here. I suppose the path can often be, that very linear. Um, Become a director, become a VP, become a chief of. That's I suppose the quite linear route carrying on in the same vein. But the great thing about sales and business development in general and recruitment in a similar vein is you're building out your network, you're learning a lot about the industry, you're kind of, I guess, dabbling in lots of different things and learning about lots of different arenas. And so you can kind of move from you can do a bit of a sideways step, like business development. is quite flexible. So, right now I'm developing and looking after our clients as a service provider. You can take those skills and become a game scout, for example, or you can become someone that um, works with platforms to get the best deal possible for their game and get their game front and center on storefronts. There's so many different avenues that you can take business development. Um, yeah, so there's it's transferable skills, right, which applies not just to sales but to any job. And again, that's where I guess the message of networking comes back again, of by speaking to other people, you can learn what those transferable skills are. How did they do it? How did they get there? And what might be open to you as well in future.
I love it. And I would also add to that, don't be afraid to look at other verticals as well, right? Skills can transfer between verticals. And sometimes people are afraid that their skills won't apply and it might just have a different name. I mean, we spoke to game directors that are product managers, right? And who would think those two are related? So take those
Mhm.
transferable skills, see where they can go. And even don't be afraid to stay in your current role, especially in sales types of roles. I mean, you don't have to manage people and you can just go out and make your money, right? Sometimes that's where you want to be and that's where your skill set is. So
Yeah.
know what you want at the end of the day, right? And stick to it and just become stronger at that.
Yeah, and on that's a really key point, to be honest, actually, is a lot of people are on this track of, I'm really good at what I do, I'm excelling at what I do as an individual, and then I get promoted to a manager. That's a whole different skill set that unfortunately so often leadership and studios don't prepare people for. And some people can be amazing at what they do and be terrible managers, at least to begin with. And some people might never be a good manager, or some people might just need the coaching and the training to develop the skills. But often it's a question that isn't asked and just happens, and some people don't want to be in that position either. So it's definitely something for individuals and studios and people in HR to be asking and to think about in their talent planning.
Emily, thank you so much for joining us today. We got to learn about skill search, client success, HR, and we may have even spoken a little bit about networking today, which I love. Before we go today, can you let us know where we can find you and skill search and whatever you want to share?
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks so much. So you can find us at skillsearch.com. I just double checked to make sure I didn't get that wrong.
Yep.
Um, please not Skillshare. Skillshare is all over YouTube. The number of times that we get called Skillshare, I'm wondering whether we should just change our name to it. If you can't beat them, join them. But no, we are Skillsearch. And you can find us there or on LinkedIn. Yeah, feel free to reach out anytime.
Awesome. We will have links to everything that Emily just mentioned on Player Driven. Again, Emily, thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Amazing. Thanks. I had such a good time.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode with Emily. It was a really fun episode, and she had some great content to share with us. If you want to learn more, just hear some of the other interviews, be sure to hit like to follow Player Driven. We'd really appreciate it. You can also check us out at playerdriven.io. We have all of our content there, from community managers to marketing to directors of games and a lot of other content there. So check out playerdriven.io. You can follow us on all the socials as well. And appreciate you guys. Have a great rest of your week.